Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our second CloudHealth Roundtable of 2026. This is a special one. It is hosted by our own Lucas Paratore, but we have a handful of his peers on the Technical Advisory Council for the FinOps Foundation. Super excited for our guests, Tammy and Josh, and David, who will be showing up in a little bit. Super excited to hear Lucas and the peers driving in and diving into some of the changes and the behind the scenes work that went into the FinOps framework and the recent updates and their thoughts on what was there, what was missed, what might be coming next year. Lucas, if you go to the next slide. First and foremost, please participate. So use chat, use Q&A. We have chat open. We have the Q&A open. If you have something, raise your hand. We'll be watching chat. We'll be watching Q&A. This is meant to be a discussion. It's meant to be a roundtable discussion with Tammy and Josh and David when he joins. But we want your input. We want your feedback as well on kind of how everything is going. So use chat, use Q&A. We'll be watching both and very excited. So Lucas, all you, my friend.
Great. So maybe we'll do a quick round of introductions. I guess I'll go first. I'm talking. So Lucas on the product team at CloudHealth, and I've been on the Technical Advisory Council for a little over 3 years now. I'm approaching the end of my term limit. So when my seat is up, it will be available. And I'm joined, I'll have Tammy go next.
Sure. Thanks, Lucas. I'm Tammy Burnitt. I am a newly elected TAC member. I was elected in December of last year. However, I'm not new to FinOps. I've been around quite some time and working as a director of FinOps to mature their program at UiPath.
And Josh, you want to tell everyone who you are?
Hello, everyone. Name is Josh Collier. I work for Superhuman, formerly known as Grammarly. We rebranded last fall. I joined the TAC alongside Tammy at the same time, but have been involved in FinOps for about 8 years now, originally with AWS and then with Grammarly, now called Superhuman. But yeah, what I do for them is, as a FinOps lead, is anything that has to do with measuring the value of our technology investments. That word again. I manage and ensure that we have cost visibility for our engineers and other stakeholders.
All right, well, that leads us very well into the first change. So you want to talk a little bit about why technology hits home for you and what went into us making this change from cloud to technology?
Yeah, for me, when I first started hearing about this change with the mission and then with the definition, my knee-jerk reaction was like, no, don't take cloud away. That's kind of what my career was built on, right? But the more I talk to practitioners and look at the community, it's pretty clear that it is broader than cloud. I mean, even my time at Grammarly the last 4 years started off with cloud, but then now SaaS, and now this kind of blend of SaaS and cloud with these LLM managed services. So it is definitely even my not say scope, but what I handle is broadening from a technology standpoint. So overall, I feel like technology is still a bit of broad of a word, but I think it's a step in the right direction to help recognize all the different areas of technology that the community is handling.
Yeah, I can relate to that. If you told the Lucas, the pre-elected Lucas, that we were going to be taking cloud from this and replacing with technology, I would not have believed you. But the market has certainly changed a lot, and maybe this isn't, as you said, the end. It's a step in the right direction because FinOps has definitely expanded beyond cloud. I don't know if technology will definitely be the long-term word. I mean, anything to add to this, Tammy, before we go on to the next one?
No, absolutely. I would agree. I think having been in FinOps for quite some time and watching the evolution of technology spend, obviously it was on-prem and cloud, but being in a very highly dynamic AI environment over the last year, you can absolutely see the span of spend across multiple suppliers, not just hyperscalers, right? As Josh mentioned, you've got your SaaS providers, your support, your licensing. And then, managing LLMs, that's a whole nother level of complication. And so I think when you look at, the landscape, if you will, of what comprises your spend, technology is probably the best starting place, right?
And so there are some impacts to us doing that. Oh, and also we made this change at the same time. The governing board also the FinOps Foundation mission goal. They also updated to use technology. So this is aligned with the governing board. And with this change, we also have the framework. So we needed to think about how the framework has been changing. We have a lot of references to cloud. So with that, you'll notice we did some merging when we think about technology and removing cloud. I don't know, maybe open it up. Either of you two have any thoughts on the changes that we made here? I know, Tammy, you definitely have something on the executive one.
I see this as even more important as we move more into this LLM world. The cloud usage is becoming a lot less stickier, much more portable. So when I read this, I think about a lot of the work I'm doing in regarding which vendor should we be hosting this LLM on, which provider should we be accessing this frontier model through. So that's a very dynamic. Every few months, that's changing for us. At least every 6 months. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind. It represents that where are we going to use this LLM, and it's going to be a lot more volatile than it has with past cloud technologies.
Absolutely. And when I look at this, architecting for cloud and workload placement, what comes to mind for me is making sure that cost is on the forefront of things that we launch into our hyperscaler environments. I think about the well-architected framework and making sure that that hygiene is baked in to anything that we're going to launch out into our regions. So I think architecting for cloud, workload placement, workload onboarding, all of that, you have to have the cost savings or the cost optimization mindset on the forefront instead of the reactive coming in and then going through the optimization iterations. I think those go hand in hand.
Yeah, I think where it gets interesting too is applications were architected for cloud, quote unquote, but then they were brought from the public cloud back to on-prem. So were those architected for cloud, or were they just modernized and we slapped on this word cloud? So that's another area that I'm definitely seeing with our customer base is this movement to public cloud, maybe back from public cloud. Even have heard, not a customer of ours, but was at an event that a customer has a mandate 100% out of the cloud, which talk about maybe 5-10 years ago, it was the exact opposite statement. I did not expect to be hearing repatriation requirements from leadership.
Interesting.
From an executive perspective, Tammy, what's your life like and how does this speak to you?
Well, it's very much speaking to me, especially over the course of the last 12 months. You really need to get engaged, if not already, or build that CCOE, Cloud Center, Technology Center of Excellence, whatever you want to call it, Cloud Center of Excellence. It's very important to get aligned with your executive leaders, be it your CTO, your CIO, your CFO. You need to understand what their strategy is. It'll make your life a lot easier and take you from more reactive to proactive. Understand their strategy in terms of new features, new products, mergers and acquisitions, expansions into new regions. This will give you kind of a heads up, if you will, so you can educate leadership on pivots or trade-offs or budgets that can or cannot accommodate some of these strategic plans.
Love it.
Lucas,
right.
comment in chat about analyst reports and repatriation on workload placement.
Hello, Rochelle. So what is interesting most? Yeah, I would say the conversation that I had, this mandate of repatriation is definitely a unique one. That's not the norm. But I also think that, maybe they're a little behind from these conversations. I'm interested. What do other people think on this tech? Have you heard any repatriation? Like mandate is even probably less likely, but initiatives.
Not personally, but I do, when I talk to people in various work groups or, in the FinOps community, there are definitely some folks out there that either with these directives or they're experiencing this, right? Because, it's hard. When you get into AI and you get into the cloud, it's, unless you've got a fairly mature FinOps practice or program or, even I would say a walk it can be very complex to get a handle on what's going on in these environments.
Yeah, and I haven't really seen it myself. That sounds like a terrible position if we were to decide to do that, for me at least. But yeah, I am seeing we have some interest in some of the, I guess you call it the neo clouds like CorelWeave, Grok, where maybe the hyperscalers can't get the GPUs you need for inference, so maybe we start kind of blending these smaller companies into our inference needs. And I say they're kind of neo clouds because for example, these type kind of give you, it's a blend of maybe they're managing some of the inference, but you have more control of the knobs versus like a full-on managed service. So I am seeing some interest from our side with that just because of the GPU crunch. But going back to the data center, yeah, that I have not come across that.
All right. Maybe next slide, and then David, I'm going to start calling on you. So Scopes has evolved. If you were to compare this slide to the last year framework changes, what you see colored here as a technology category, you may have was previously called a scope. And this evolution, I think, is really nuanced, but is important because the conversations that at least we were having at CloudHealth, and I'll pass this on to the next person, is that understanding and taking ownership of SaaS spend is just the beginning. Like it is about the layer that you add onto that. And it is really just, SaaS is just an input to the actual scope and the ownership of what you are responsible for. So anybody here on the TAC want to kind of talk about how they view that transition, or if you've felt that in your life? David, any thoughts to you? You're now a newly joined person.
Yes. Thanks for letting me join in. I think it's still as far as like how we classify things. I in some ways consider it irrelevant. I know that we're qualifying things as categories and scopes and such, but I think the way in which scopes apply to the everyday business that we're doing, everyone understands that. So regardless of the terminology or not, the importance of scopes is critical to actually being able to function as looking at the business value, beyond just like a technology expense, right? And so I think that's the goal of some of this, and I do think it has been like we're still kind of learning and figuring out exactly how everything works and fits together. The framework is ever adapting, and I think that's a good thing. And we're always open to hear feedback from other folks, but generally that's how we interpret some of that. And so I do think they are instrumental in making sure that you're managing your technology estate effectively.
And labor too, right? Especially labor. David actually fought to have labor listed as one of the technology categories.
Stop it! I'm a big proponent of including labor as like an efficiency of look all the gains that we made, but I do think it's a little challenging, and we're getting very much into finance when we start to talk labor expense, and so I'm a proponent of no labor expense included in this, but I may or may not be overruled. That's the beauty of this. I can have my opinions, and other people can have theirs, and ultimately, if theirs are better, then we're going to adopt it. So, but yes, I'm not a big labor person. So.
It's part of the fun of the TAC is we get to talk these things out. Tammy, looks like you came off mute. You got something to say, sister?
I did. I agree with everything David said. I think some of the accompanying delivery that accommodates these business strategy and technology strategy scopes is unified TCO, your unified total cost of operations, your cost to serve metrics. By, kind of bringing these up a layer and kind of defining them more clearly, I think that these scopes for business strategy and technology strategy can help you sell some of these necessary business cases or edge cases to collect the data and normalize it in the manner that you need to, and bringing in, the SaaS or, support licensing. That's going to get you to your cost to serve metrics. And, we talk about, moving to a more advanced FinOps program, and it's the value word, right? Can you get to a position where you can measure the value or the profitability of the technology under your remit?
That was so much more articulate than mine. So thanks, Tammy, for making it clear to people. I appreciate that.
Yeah, one of the things that I think gets interesting, though, is you start bringing in all of those, and maybe this is where the executive conversation, it can become so successful, or it becomes so specific to the executive, is it starts to become really valuable and sensitive data about companies. As you get really good at unit economics and you understand your cost per API call, your cost per Netflix stream, and for these publicly traded companies, like this really becomes sensitive data. Anybody on this TAC ever like approaching that line that they ever feel like their data is becoming too sensitive to share with the people that are typically accessing this FinOps data?
I'm just starting to get into that this year where potentially down the line, some of the data I'm putting together is going to be tied to revenue and usage-based type billing. And this is just kind of talk right now, but yeah, it's so yes, that is getting. I'm starting to have conversations with people making decisions on pricing and things like that, and making sure I have the right data for them.
That's
Totally agree, Josh. I think I've experienced this over the last year and a half, and generally that's why we push teams across like different products to build their own metrics and include their own like proprietary data without us having to include it. I think it's like a challenging situation. Like even Josh, like he's gonna have to be way more cautious with what he shares, how he thinks about it. And instead of just having dashboards open to whoever, you have to start thinking about RBAC and kind of like role-based access, right? Across the board and being really, really cautious with who sees it. So we generally ask, like we see all of this data, but we ask people to kind of create their own, or we can help them create their own. And then they kind of manage their own, if it's a cost per contract customer, whatever customer process is going on, we try to be cautious with that in managing any of that for teams because it does get sensitive really, really fast for sure.
Especially when you start talking to executives. That executive's not just responsible for public cloud. They have SaaS, they have all these other ownerships, and they're responsible for labor for that department. Now, for them, yeah, it's great to have a benchmark, and we want to track this unit cost, and it's great to see it going, hopefully going down. But you're gonna speak more their language the more you take in their ownership perspective.
100%. Yep.
Cool. All right, on to the next one. So what do we think is missed? And maybe I'm going to kick this one off first. So for me, and this is maybe some of the bias that I get from CloudHealth, I live and breathe MSPs. So these are the managed service providers, the Rackspaces, the Trace3s of the world. And this is something that we see as a growing market just in my conversations. If you look at some of the state of cloud reports that have been released, it looks like MSP is growing in those areas as well. And right now, although the framework can be used by MSPs to provide a FinOps service, it doesn't necessarily help or how to create a FinOps service. It doesn't teach you how to scale that out. It doesn't teach you how to productize it. To manage the FinOps capability, maybe things would fall into that. But still, if you read the terminology, it really is geared towards the practitioner, which might be the right decision. But in the next year, this is going to be something that I'd expect us to be talking a lot more about is, do we need to change verbiage like we did to include technology instead of just cloud that can appeal to both customer types? Do we need to do things like introduce a new capability? Do we need to do something crazy like introduce a new framework? These are the kinds of things that I'm going to be pushing on the TAC, and I'm sure like we have Parker who works at Software One. He also is in this world. I'm sure he'll be having an opinion. So that's definitely something that I think is ready to be included. Anyone on this TAC have any experience with any MSPs or worked with any in the past? Not sure. No, so this one's driven from me and a couple of the others on the
Briefly
TAC.
at briefly at Amazon or AWS when I was there, but very, very, very limited for sure.
Great. Well, as we have people on the line, make sure if you have opinions on this or have any questions, bring it up. I'll pass it off. What other people think were potentially not necessarily missing, but or opportunities for next year for us to incorporate?
I think there's one that we talked about on the summit recently, and it was alliances and deals, and either a SaaS or a hyperscaler commits. We talked about getting FinOps personas getting pulled into that, or maybe that's a new persona that comes up. A lot of the decision making in terms of what we do and strategy and spend has a lot to do with the commercials that we have spread across our hyperscaler and our SaaS providers. So I think we may see that one coming up more. I know JR talked about it vaguely in the last summit. So I see that one as becoming a hot topic and tied to executive,
Josh, David?
Something that's in my world right now is, and probably a lot of people's world, is the growing usage of AI in coding and product development. And for now, I'm saying I'm focused on just the end product, like for our customers type of development and cost. That's where the bulk of it is. And in my world, I'm kind of leaving that to the engineering managers, platform DevOps people to kind of put guardrails and such around that, because they best understand how these teams should be using these products. But I feel like that's going to be something that's going to continue to kind of sneak up, and I don't feel prepared to be able to kind of manage that, especially with what I already have on my side. But I'd be curious if you all have kind of come across this, and to me that's going to be a unique item that's going to maybe be later this year, if not earlier.
right there with you, Josh. Managing code to deliver code, if you will, right? That spend is ballooning, shall we say, right? And I couldn't agree more. That's another area where it's rapidly growing and evolving.
Per the state of FinOps, 98% of respondents now manage AI spend, which, I mean, this is unbelievable growth if you look year over year. David, you guys are doing some pretty cool stuff with AI. I got a demo of how you're interacting with it. Any thoughts? How are
Yes.
you guys charging that back? I'd love to maybe hear a little bit on that too.
I still think, honestly, Lucas, it's very much like cloud in the early stages here at Adobe still, where we have a lot of leeway to go and try things. Essentially, what I'm expecting is in like basically, so we're in Q2 now because our fiscal year ends in November, which is super odd, but we've been in Q2 for a month now, and what we're starting to see is there's just kind of okay, we've spent some time creating, building, trying things out, not really worrying too much about budget constraints. And now we're starting to kind of get back to this, like, all right, we need to assess and see if we're getting value out of some of these things that we've built that are, super cool. But like, just because you build something cool doesn't mean it's valuable, right? And I think that's what we're starting to see. And so the biggest stuff that we've seen value is essentially in like AI related to so AI for FinOps, not necessarily FinOps for AI just yet. The AI for FinOps space is just massive right now, and some of the stuff we're seeing and the results we're seeing of like the long tail stuff that no one really truly understands or doesn't have the ability to kind of build, automation, because it might be 1% of your spend, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't check it. And we're starting to see just massive opportunities with like creating stuff that allows people to see customized views for them, looking at every single service, building out recommendations for them, building out custom campaigns and comms based on the CloudTrail data and Azure data that we get. And hey, this person logged into this account or logged into this service, and we're going to send them a customized targeted message about some optimization they can do. That stuff we're just seeing tremendous opportunity and growth with. Just being able to save money, being able to find the things that we forget about. There's this joke at Adobe, and I would say most companies, where you're like, well, eventually the easy savings are going to run out. And I just think that we're generally really good at messing up and wasting money in cloud, and not just Adobe, at almost every company. So it's just going to be easy savings that we find in different places that we hadn't checked before. Whether it's CloudWatch log groups that are just, set to never expire, the storage retention, and so that's some of the stuff that we're doing, internally, and even like getting into things like natural language to create charts instead of creating customized charts and then asking people to tell us what they need or do it themselves, providing that natural language iteration for them to say, hey, I need this data in this way, and then creating that for them almost instantaneously, and us not having to do as much anymore. That's reducing our labor, Lucas, which I think you'd like that, and helping us, I think, kind of get to the point where we're really efficient with this stuff. So AI for FinOps is like a really big one at Adobe right now, and we're seeing a lot of success with it.
Yeah, Rochelle, good point there. I think we do need to think. I think this is beyond intersecting disciplines. We really need to invest a bit more on the shift left for AI use cases kind of world. And then maybe I'll talk about the other profitability point before. Is any other thoughts anybody here wants to comment on?
Well, in regards to AI, I do think AI for FinOps is the big story this year, especially in our world. And when we talk about shifting up an organization, I think using AI now to take care of those optimization, allocation, and even modifying how you report cost or get that information to the stakeholders, that's all got to change and become a lot less of a time suck. So you can't spend more time on the higher level things. So that's one of my big focuses this year. And I think it's probably smart for most practitioners to be leveraging AI as much as they possibly can right now, to kind of enable them to do that.
So AI for FinOps versus FinOps for AI. AI for FinOps is more important to you guys right now, Josh?
Well, no, I wouldn't say one's more important than the other. If I want to be better,
you have to pick one. You're talking to a product manager. What's one? What's two?
I would say the higher priority probably is right now is AI for FinOps for me, because that's going to enable me to improve our FinOps for AI.
Yep, I plus one on that. David, Tammy, where would you fall on that?
Same thing with Josh. He hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, time to value. That's your AI for FinOps. So the quicker we can get the information, all right, identification, information, termination, remediation, whatever you want to call it, time is of the essence. Time equals money.
So I agree, plus one, and I hear the same thing when I talk to customers. I'm not sure the state of FinOps report reflected that. I think it was the opposite, although I don't have any new tattoos of the state of FinOps results. TJ, do you have that easily accessible while you could pull up? Was AI for FinOps a higher priority than FinOps for AI?
Let me pull it up.
All right, as you're pulling that up. The best point, I think, not that you guys other didn't make good points, it's the time to value. Tam, you hit it on the nail on the head. It really, the whole AI for FinOps, whether it's querying data, whether it's massaging data, like it speeds up how fast you can get the right answers in the person's hands.
And from my point of view, this shift has happened dramatically over the last 3 months. So I can't remember when the survey was done, but over the last 3 months, it's been a huge shift.
Yeah, probably, I think we presented it 3 months ago, right at the I don't know, probably
Josh,
6 months ago was roughly.
that's a great call out though. I
Yeah.
I do feel like it in the last like since like November, December basically, it has just went crazy for what people realize they can do, especially with like MCPs. And that has really revolutionized the way that we're able to like access data and information and then, interpret it and create recommendations based on that. So
Under current and future priorities from the State of FinOps report, FinOps for AI was number one. AI for FinOps at 33%. AI for FinOps was number four at 24%. And then under the which of these skill sets are you looking to add to your FinOps practice in the next 12 months, either via people or tooling? AI cost management was number one. AI engineering was number five. So I think this agrees kind of what this says. AI or FinOps for AI is a larger priority for most organizations.
But that may be a recent trend. That may, because that definitely is outside of, they've been collecting data for that for like a year. So it definitely has results from more than 6 months ago in it. Interesting point. All right. Oh, thanks, Rochelle. I do want to just go back quickly. You added the profitability to include labor. So I agree with you. And this is, I think, where like the struggle comes in. I have I have a lot of heartburn on this. Where do we draw a line concept? Because when you bring in labor, your profitability view increases. When you start bringing in more and more of these things, you will be able to start coming to a more accurate profitability number. So if our goal is to be able to enable that, then should we never draw a line? Or are we going to have to draw a line and say FinOps is about profitability of technology spend and draw the line there that it doesn't include operating costs like labor? Like, I think it's a really difficult line to draw because, as you say, it becomes more valuable the more you bring in. So
I'm right.
Go ahead.
I'm right there with you, Lucas. I feel like that line, labor kind of draws that line between what's falls under like finance team, strictly finance versus FinOps. It's still quite gray, but I think labor draws a pretty good line there. In my opinion, and compared to my counterparts or people I work closely with in finance, I mean, they do very different work, focus on very different things, and it's definitely, again, labor draws that line well.
But then how do you account for public cloud costs growing and decreasing headcount? I mean, it's probably no surprise organizations are laying off engineers to leverage AI, and there is a cloud or on-prem, wherever you're running that workload, AI cost. So how can you truly tell the story of a unit economic if you're not taking labor into account, if you're doing trade-offs between labor and AI?
At the top level, it should be taken into account.
Yeah.
But that's where our partnership with finance team to kind of incorporate that information in our numbers we already have to kind of have the final report. So to me, if you're going to include labor, it needs to be through a partnership with finance.
Good point.
100% agree, Josh. And when you don't do that, you're going to get into a little bit of a contest and a turf battle with finance because they'll have what they want to report and you'll have what you think is the right number. And you will be wrong because finance is always right because that's what gets reported to the street. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I think this ties back to the previous conversation just a few minutes ago about using AI. I see using AI for product development or FinOps. I see the efficiency gains and the cost usually are twofold part of the story when you're trying to sell something. But are we at a point where we can efficiently or effective, use AI to deliver everything for an efficiency gain? Maybe not, but I do think that both of those are part of the conversation.
Love it. Anyone on this call that has opinions here, or when I will see you in 2 months at FinOps X, please help, because I think this line drawing, we really need to figure it out over the next year, especially as Scopes continues to get clarified more and more. All right. Well, any last words anybody has to say before I wrap this up? Cool. All right. Well, if what does TJ say? What words are needed for this slide?
Thank you all for joining. Appreciate it. We would love to continue the conversation both in regards to scopes or capability changes, but also in regards to what you're seeing in your industries, what you're seeing in the field. Please continue the conversation in our CloudHealth community dedicated to the FinOps users. Please join us there, continue the conversation. But I wanted to say a quick thank you to all of our panelists for joining us. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and helping drive this discussion further with our users. Thank you so much, Tammy, Josh, and David.